I grew up in South Africa. It's the country at the southern tip of Africa. Not only is it one of the most beautiful places I have ever seen, but the people are also the most welcoming and inclusive I've ever experienced. Southern Africa was colonized by the English and the Dutch. The Dutch would eventually call themselves the Afrikaners. They would occasionally fight it out to see who would control the natural resources being mined. Nothing of significant value, mind you, just gold and diamonds. Thankfully, they learned to stop bickering and shared the country's wealth amongst themselves. Only themselves. To be specific, I grew up in Unit 2, a suburb in a larger township called Chatsworth, which was outside the city of Durban on the country's east coast. I can only imagine that when Chatsworth was originally planned, nobody bothered to name our subdivisions or our streets. For example, in my suburb, Unit 2, our roads were just numbered from 201. I lived on the corner of 201 and 224. That's right. In case you're not aware, South Africa is most famous for apartheid. I'm a descendant of Indian slaves shipped to Africa to compete with the local labor force. Apartheid didn't just pit blacks against whites and whites against blacks. Apartheid fed tribalism on both sides and segregated us even further. Slavery only officially ended in South Africa in 1994 when people of color were allowed to vote in the national election for the first time. I was a man by then. Before that, we weren't allowed to use public transport, go to the same schools or beaches. Private establishments were even less hospitable, and we didn't dare get caught in a white neighborhood after dark. Now, I was a horrible student in high school. However, with unrestrained self confidence, I decided that I would be a success without post secondary education. So in 1995, fresh out of high school, I landed my first big people job as a sales associate at an electrical wholesale goods company. On my first day, everyone was friendly and welcoming and wished me well. I felt like things would be okay. But while being shown around, my mentor pointed out the whites only toilet we weren't allowed to use. It even had a keypad with an electronic lock. No one ever openly talked about the whites only restroom. We all just pretended it didn't exist. At the end of year party, the managing director stood at the top of a staircase and threw banknotes to the yard workers below so everyone could watch them jostle. I resigned shortly after. With my parents' support, I reconsidered my perspective on higher education, but the harsh lessons I learned in that environment about racism, subtle and not so subtle, shaped me. South Africa has changed a lot since. Its people are capable and resilient, and they're working towards building a better world for their children. The current South African constitution is the fifth version because change is necessary to support all her people. It's 2021. My two eldest kids are older than I was when I joined that company, and I've never had a first day like that one since. But as a person of color in Canada, I still see people pretending keypads don't exist.